Today we're reading references out of As Bill Sees It to will. This is part 3, and we're going to start on page 272. Troubles of our own making. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation. But we invariably find that at some time in the past we have made decisions based on self, which later place us in a position to be hurt. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. 282. Instincts run wild. Every time a person imposes his instincts unreasonably upon others, unhappiness follows. If the pursuit of wealth tramples upon people who happen to be in the way, then anger, jealousy, and revenge are likely to be aroused. If sex runs riot, there is a similar uproar. Demands made upon other people for too much attention, protection, and love can invite only domination or revulsion in the protectors themselves, two emotions quite as unhealthy as the demands which invoke them. When an individual's desire for prestige becomes uncontrollable, whether in the sewing circle or at the international conference table, other people suffer and often revolt. This collision of instincts can produce anything from a cold snub to a blazing revolution. 283. Powerless over alcohol. I had gone steadily downhill, and on the day in 1934, I lay upstairs in the hospital, knowing for the first time I was utterly hopeless. Lois was downstairs, and Dr. Silkworth was trying in his gentle way to tell her what was wrong with me and that I was hopeless. But Bill has a tremendous amount of willpower, she said. He has tried desperately to get well. We have tried everything, doctor. Why can't he stop? His explanation that my drinking, once a habit, had become an obsession, a true insanity that condemned me to drink against my will. In the late stages of our drinking, the will to resist has fled. Yet when we admit complete defeat and become entirely ready to try AA principles, our obsession leaves us and we enter a new dimension, freedom under God as we understand Him. 295. Praying rightly. We thought we had been deeply serious about religious practices. However, upon honest appraisal, we found that we had been most superficial, or sometimes, going to extremes, we had wallowed in emotionalism and had also mistaken this for true religious feelings. In both cases, we have been asking something for nothing. We had not prayed rightly. We had always said, "Grant me my wishes," instead of, "Thy will be done." The love of God and man we understood not at all. Therefore, we remained self-deceived and so incapable of receiving enough grace to restore us to sanity. 3:15, greater than ourselves. If a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. But we found that such codes and philosophies did not save us, no matter how much we tried. We could wish to be moral. We could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all of our might, but the power needed for change wasn't there. Our human resources, as marshaled by our will, were not sufficient. They failed utterly. Lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. 3:20. Running the whole show. Most people try to live by self-propulsion. Each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show and is forever trying to arrange the lights, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. If his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. What usually happens? The show doesn't come off very well. Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, he is sure that other people are more to blame. He becomes angry, self-indignant, self-pitying. Is he not really a self-seeker, even when trying to be useful? Is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if only he manages well? 3:28. A newfound providence. When dealing with a prospect of agnostic or atheist bent, you had better use everyday language to describe spiritual principles. There is no arousing any prejudice he may have against certain theological terms and conceptions, about which he may already be confused. Don't raise such issues no matter what your own convictions are. Every man and woman who has joined AA and intends to stick has, without realizing it, made a beginning on step 3. Isn't it true that in all matters touching upon alcohol, each of them has decided to turn his or her life over to the care, protection, and guidance of AA? Already a willingness has been achieved to cast out one's own will and one's own ideas about the alcohol problem in favor of those suggested by AA. Now, if this is not turning one's will and life over to a newfound providence, then what is? And our final reading today, 3:29. Do it our way. In praying, our immediate temptation will be to ask for specific solutions to specific problems and for the ability to help other people as we have already thought we should be helped. In that case, we are asking God to do it our way. Therefore, we ought to consider each request carefully to see what its real merit is. Even so, when making specific requests, it will be well to add to each of them this qualification: if it be thy will. Great.